First mysterious encounter, April 2nd, 1847. The wind has finally died down enough for me to write without the pages fluttering like a startled quail. Spring comes late to Wyoming territory, and this year seems particularly reluctant. I've been keeping this journal since James and I first arrived at the trading post 3 years ago, though I find myself the sole author now. It's been 4 months since the fever took him. 4 months of running Blackwood Trading Post alone. Today, I finished the inventory James began before falling ill. The winter stores are holding well enough, though the coffee beans are running lower than I'd like. The spring supply wagons should arrive within the month if the weather permits. Until then, I'll need to be stingy with my personal ration, a sacrifice I make grudgingly each morning. April 5th, 1847. 3 Shoshone families came through today, bringing beaver pelts and dried berries to trade. Eli Blackfeather, who has traded with us since James and I first arrived, asked how I was faring alone. The concern in his eyes seemed genuine, though I suspect he was also assessing whether a widow could manage fair trades. I gave him the same price James would have, perhaps a touch more generous with the salt and steel needles. His wife, Morning Sky, pressed a small pouch of medicinal herbs into my hand before they left. For strength, she said. It occurred to me today that in 4 months, I've not once considered returning east. This wild country has become more home to me than the prim Pennsylvania town where I was raised. What would my mother say if she could see her daughter now? Hair wind-blown, hands rough, trading with Indians and mountain men alike. April 8th, 1847. The first wagon party of the season stopped at the post today. A family of 7 bound for Oregon. Father, mother, grandmother, and 4 children with eyes as wide as dinner plates. The mother looked exhausted already, and they're barely a week out of independence. I didn't have the heart to tell her the hardest parts of the trail lie ahead. They purchased flour, salt pork, and 2 spare wagon wheels I've had stored since last autumn. The children stared at me as though a woman alone at a trading post was as foreign as the Shoshone to them. Perhaps they're right to stare. 3 years ago I would have never imagined this life for myself. Now I can't fathom any other. April 12th, 1847. The spring blizzard that's been threatening for days finally broke this afternoon. The snow began just after midday, thick flakes driven sideways by a bitter wind. I was securing the livestock when I spotted a lone figure on horseback approaching from the east. In this weather, turning away a traveler means sentencing them to death, so I waited at the door as the rider approached. When he dismounted, I was struck by several oddities at once. His clothes, while cut in a style not entirely unfamiliar, seemed too thin for the weather, yet he showed no signs of cold. The material had a sheen unlike any wool or cotton I've encountered. He introduced himself as Daniel, no surname offered. His manner of speaking struck me immediately, precise yet peculiar, using phrases I've never heard despite having conversed with travelers from all corners of the nation and beyond. His accent is unlike any I can place, not quite Eastern, certainly not Southern, with none of the rough edges of the frontier nor the lilt of European immigrants. I wasn't expecting to find a trading post in these conditions, he said, looking around with an expression I couldn't quite decipher. Not quite surprise, more like confirmation. Blackwood Trading Post stays open year-round, I replied, perhaps more defensively than necessary. My husband established it as a permanent fixture on the trail. Your husband? His eyes flickered to my face, then down to my unadorned hand. He passed this winter. Fever. I'm sorry for your loss, he said with what seemed genuine sympathy. Then, oddly, that must be challenging running this operation independently. The way he said it, not with the usual doubt or pity, but with what sounded like respect, caught me off guard. April 13th, 1847. The stranger, Daniel, spent the night in the small room I keep for travelers caught in bad weather. The storm continues unabated, so he remains today. This morning I had a chance to observe him more carefully as he browsed the trading post's goods. His hands are what I notice most. clean, impossibly so, with neatly trimmed nails and no calluses to speak of. Not the hands of a man who works the land, or traps, or drives cattle. Yet he's clearly not a dandy or city gentleman either. He moves with the confidence and awareness of someone accustomed to taking care of himself. When he thought I wasn't looking, he pulled a small object from his pocket, glanced at it, and quickly returned it. Too small for a watch and oddly shaped. When I approached, he asked about purchasing provisions: jerky, hardtack, coffee, and several other staples. Standard trail supplies, though he seemed to know exactly what he needed without the usual hemming and hawing of most travelers. When it came time to pay, he produced coins that gleamed as if freshly minted, gold eagles and silver dollars, their edges perfect, their faces unmarred by the usual wear of circulation. I've handled currency from most states and many foreign lands, but never have I seen coins so pristine. When I commented on their condition, a shadow of concern passed across his face before he offered a tight smile. "Family heirlooms," he said, "kept safe for generations." I didn't press further, but I know a hasty explanation when I hear one. April 14, 1847. The storm cleared overnight. Daniel prepared to depart after breakfast. As I packed his purchases, I found myself reluctant to see him leave, this peculiar man with his clean hands and strange speech. "I imagined you get all manner through here," he said conversationally. "All sorts," I agreed. "Trappers, migrants, soldiers, the occasional lost soul." "And which am I?" His eyes, remarkably blue, almost unnaturally so, held mine with an intensity that made me pause. "I haven't decided yet," I answered truthfully. He smiled then, a genuine expression that transformed his face. "Fair enough." As he mounted his horse, a fine animal, though with a saddle of unusual design, he turned back to me. "I'll be returning next month, same date, the 12th. The specificity struck me as odd. Most travelers can't predict their movements with such precision. "I'll be here," I replied. "Trading post doesn't move." "No," he said, with that same enigmatic smile. "I suppose it doesn't." After he rode out, I returned to the ledger and logged the sale. The strange coins sit beside me now as I write. They bear the expected markings of U.S. currency, yet something about them unsettles me. The eagle on the gold piece seems rendered with impossible detail. The date, however, is what truly confounds me. 1838. 9 years old, yet shining as if pressed yesterday. April 20th, 1847. Martha Wilson from the homestead down the valley stopped by with eggs to trade. Her husband broke his leg last month and she's managing their farm alone until he heals. We sat drinking tea, comparing notes on being women temporarily in charge of men's domains. Only my temporary became permanent. I found myself wanting to mention the strange visitor, Daniel, but held my tongue. Martha enjoys a good gossip, and I'm not ready to share him yet. The thought startled me. When did I begin thinking of a customer as someone to share, like a secret? Still, I catch myself glancing at the calendar, counting the days until the 12th of May. April 25th, 1847. A large party of migrants came through today, 15 wagons strong. They emptied nearly half my store of supplies, which would ordinarily be cause for celebration. Yet I found myself distracted, comparing each male traveler to Daniel. None had his peculiar manner of speech, his two clean hands, his knowing eyes. What is it about this man that lingers in my thoughts? Perhaps simply the mystery. In this life, most people show their nature plainly, the greed of some trappers, the desperation of migrants, the weariness of those who've seen too much frontier hardship. Daniel showed me nothing but a carefully composed exterior with glimpses of something else beneath, like looking at still water and knowing something moves in the depths. April 30th, 1847. The supply wagon finally arrived from Fort Laramie today. As I unpacked the goods, checking against my order list, I found myself examining the fabrics more carefully than usual, recalling the strange sheen of Daniel's clothing. Nothing in my inventory compares. 12 more days until he returns, if he keeps his word. Many make promises on the trail that the trail itself breaks. Yet I have a feeling Daniel is different. He spoke of his return with certainty, as if he could command time itself to deliver him here on the appointed day. I placed his coins in a separate box beneath my bed rather than adding them to the trading post's funds. I tell myself it's because their unusual condition might raise questions if I spend them. The truth is more complicated. These coins, like the man who carried them, seem both of this world and separate from it. When I hold them, I feel as though I'm touching something impossible, something that should not exist in my hands in this remote trading post in 1847. I am not a fanciful woman. Life on the frontier burns such tendencies out of a person quickly. Yet as I write these words by lamplight, I cannot shake the sense that Daniel is not simply a traveler passing through, but a visitor from somewhere else entirely. Not just another place, but perhaps another time. A ridiculous notion, born of isolation and too many evenings alone with only my thoughts for company, yet it lingers like the scent of rain before a storm, promising something both refreshing and dangerous on the horizon. 12 days. Then perhaps I'll have answers or more likely deeper questions. Growing suspicion. May 10th, 1847. I have circled May 21st on my calendar, the day Daniel said he would return. Next month, same date, were his exact words. How peculiar that he would be so precise. Most travelers through these parts cannot plan their journeys with such exactitude, being at the mercy of weather, health, and fortune. Yet something in his manner suggested he would indeed arrive precisely when he claimed. The pristine coins he paid with remain in my special box, too unusual to spend. I find myself handling them often, running my fingers over their perfect edges. They appear newly minted, though date back several years. How does one maintain coins in such condition while traveling the frontier? May 15, 1847. Eli Blackfeather visited the trading post today, bringing excellent beaver pelts. I mentioned the peculiar traveler from last month, describing his unusual appearance and manner. Eli grew thoughtful and spoke of old tribal stories about spirit walkers who move between worlds. I laughed it off, but his seriousness gave me pause. Eli has always been practical and not given to superstitious tales. He cautioned me to observe this visitor carefully upon his return. Some souls do not belong to the time they walk in, he said before departing. His words have left me unsettled. May 20th, 1847. Tomorrow is the day Daniel is to return. I find myself strangely anticipatory, arranging my hair more carefully and setting aside my finest remaining dress. This is foolishness, of course. He is merely a curiosity, not a suitor. James has been gone only 5 months, and my heart remains tender with grief. Yet I cannot deny the fluttering excitement at the prospect of conversation with someone so different from the usual visitors to my remote post. I have prepared questions about his travels, hoping to unravel some of his mystery. May 21st, 1847. He came. Just as promised, Daniel arrived this afternoon. The strangest part was not his arrival itself, but the precise timing of it, almost exactly the same hour as his previous visit. When I remarked upon his punctuality, he smiled and said, "Like clockwork, isn't it?" What an odd phrase. Clockwork implies machinery, yet he seemed to apply it to himself. More startling was his knowledge of events I could not possibly know about. He spoke casually of President Polk declaring war on Mexico, providing details of battles far to the south. When I asked how he had news so current, he mentioned something called telegraph reports before quickly changing the subject. The newspaper that comes with the supply wagons is always months old. This information would be impossible to know so quickly this far west. He brought gifts. A small tin decorated with elaborate designs containing sweets unlike any I have tasted. They are perfectly formed little squares in vibrant colors that dissolve sweetly on the tongue. When I asked what they were called, he hesitated before saying they were imported candies. Also a writing implement he called a pencil that writes smoother than any quill I have used, requiring no ink at all. The mark it makes can even be removed with a piece of rubber he provided. Such conveniences. I watched him carefully today, noting his every peculiarity. His hands remain unnaturally clean and smooth for a traveler. His teeth are perfectly straight and white. His speech contains words and phrases I've never encountered, though he seems to catch himself when I look confused. Most curiously, he asked if he could take a photo of the trading post, then quickly corrected himself to say, "Make a sketch." What is a photo? He departed with the same promise, next month, same date, and I already find myself marking June 21st on my calendar. May 22nd, 1847. I cannot stop thinking about Daniel's visit. I examine the strange tin of sweets today in daylight. The printing on it is unlike any I've seen, so precise and colorful, with a clarity no printing press I know could achieve. The pencil writes with consistent smoothness no matter how long I use it. These items alone suggest manufacturing processes beyond what exists in any country I know of. When I asked Daniel about his home, he spoke vaguely of back east, but showed none of the regional speaking patterns of any eastern state I'm familiar with. His knowledge of distant events with such immediacy troubles me. Either he travels at impossible speeds, or he has some means of knowing things beyond ordinary communication. June 10th, 1847. The Oregon trail wagons have started coming through in earnest now. I am busy from dawn until dusk most days, which leaves little time for pondering my mysterious visitor. Yet, in quiet moments, I find myself thinking of him still. I've started a separate journal just to record my observations about Daniel. When I review my notes, the evidence points to something beyond ordinary explanation. Either he is mad and his delusions happen to include incredible craftsmanship and knowledge, or he is something else entirely. A spy seems unlikely. What would any nation want with intelligence on a remote trading post? No, there is something more impossible at work here. June 19th, 1847. 2 more days until Daniel's return. I've been reading what books I have that might explain his peculiarities. James had several volumes on natural philosophy and world cultures that I've never properly examined until now. None provide satisfactory explanations for Daniel's anomalies. I've drafted a list of pointed questions to ask him. His reactions may reveal more than his answers. June 21st, 1847. I scarcely know how to record what happened today. Daniel arrived precisely on schedule, appearing suddenly on the trail from the east, though I'd been watching that direction all morning. He brought another gift, a small book of poetry published this year, which should be impossible, as it would have had to cross the ocean and half a continent to reach me. We spoke at length while I prepared him a meal. He was explaining something about historical trading patterns when he made a critical slip. Back in 2023, historians believe that frontier trading posts were central to cultural exchange, but they rarely document the daily operations, which is why my research... He stopped abruptly, seeing my expression. I demanded to know what he meant by 2023. He attempted to redirect, claiming I had misheard, but his face had gone pale. Our conversation grew awkward after that, and he seemed eager to conclude his visit. The most significant event occurred as he was leaving. He dropped something when retrieving his payment. I noticed it after he'd gone. It was a small rectangular device with a glass face, about the size of a playing card but thinner. When I picked it up, the glass suddenly illuminated with a bright light, showing tiny pictures and symbols. I nearly dropped it in shock. The light faded quickly, but I had seen enough to know this was no technology of our time. I've hidden the device in my sewing box. I believe it may be the evidence I need to compel him toward honesty when he returns. June 22nd, 1847. I have spent hours examining the device Daniel dropped. It remains dark and lifeless now, but I know what I saw. The craftsmanship is beyond anything possible in our modern factories. The materials are unlike any metal or glass I'm familiar with. It feels almost too light to be real. I've been considering explanations for all I've observed. Madness seems unlikely, both his and mine coinciding would be too great a coincidence. Foreign origin cannot explain the technology I've glimpsed. I am left with only impossible theories. What if Daniel comes from another time? The year he mentioned, 2023, is nearly 2 centuries in the future. The idea is so fantastic I can scarcely write it without feeling foolish, yet it would explain everything: his knowledge of current events, history to him, his strange manner of speech, language evolves, his unfamiliar items, future manufacturing, his perfect health and grooming, better medicine and hygiene. Am I entertaining lunacy to even consider this? Perhaps. But the evidence points to something beyond conventional explanation. July 10, 1847. The device has remained dark, despite my attempts to revive the strange light I saw. I've wrapped it carefully and keep it with me always now. Traders and travelers continue to come and go, but none bring news as current as Daniel casually mentioned. I find myself counting days until his next visit, more eagerly than is proper. July 15, 1847. I dreamt of Daniel last night. In my dream, he showed me wonders beyond imagination. Carriages that moved without horses, buildings that touched the clouds, and people who could speak to one another across vast distances using devices like the one he dropped. I awoke with a sense of longing for things I cannot name. Is this what madness feels like? Or have my encounters with Daniel opened my mind to possibilities beyond the narrow confines of what we deem possible? July 20th, 1847. Tomorrow is July 21st. Daniel will come again if his pattern holds true. I have decided I must confront him directly. I will show him the device and demand the truth, whatever it may be. I have my father's pistol cleaned and loaded. Not that I believe Daniel means me harm, but the truth he carries may be dangerous in its own way. If he truly is from another time, what does that mean for everything I believe about the world? What does it mean that he has chosen to visit me repeatedly? There must be purpose behind his appearances at my humble trading post. Tonight, I prepare myself for revelations that may change everything. If my suspicions are correct, tomorrow I will speak with a man from the future. May Providence grant me the wisdom to handle whatever truths he brings. Confession, July 21st, 1847, morning. Today is the day. I have hardly slept, rehearsing my approach until dawn broke. The small glass device sits before me on the table, wrapped in soft cloth. My questions are written in careful script on a sheet of paper, though I have committed them to memory. Father's pistol remains loaded in my apron pocket. Not that I believe I will need it, but the solid weight of it grants me courage. If my suspicions prove correct, I am about to confront a man who defies everything I understand about God's creation. If I am wrong, and he provides some mundane explanation for his peculiarities, I shall feel the greatest fool. Yet I cannot continue in ignorance. The mystery of Daniel has consumed my thoughts these past months, and today I shall have answers whatever they may be. The trading post is prepared. I've turned away the few travelers who sought supplies, claiming illness. This conversation requires privacy. Now I wait, watching the Eastern Trail for his approach. July 21st, 1847. Evening. My hands tremble as I write these words. Everything has changed, though the world outside my window appears unchanged. The birds still sing their evening songs, the sun sets with the same golden glow over the mountains. Yet my understanding of creation itself has been shattered and remade. Daniel arrived precisely at noon, as though summoned by the sun's position. I invited him inside, offered him coffee, and for several minutes we engaged in ordinary pleasantries. He asked about my health, the trading conditions, whether the season's travelers had been numerous. I answered mechanically, my heart pounding with each passing moment. When I could bear it no longer, I retrieved the device from its hiding place and set it upon the table between us. The change in his expression told me everything before he spoke a word. Shock, Dismay and resignation crossed his features in quick succession. "Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "You dropped it during your last visit," I answered, maintaining as much composure as I could muster. "It fell from your pocket as you were leaving. I meant to return it today, but first, I require answers." He reached for it, but I moved it beyond his grasp. "You called it a phone once when you thought I wasn't listening," I continued, unfurling my list of observations. "You speak of events before they occur. You use phrases unknown to any region I'm familiar with. Your possessions are crafted with impossible precision, and last month you mentioned a year that has not yet come to pass, 2023. His face had gone pale. "Sarah, I can explain." "Then do so," I interrupted, surprising myself with my boldness. "Tell me who you truly are, and where or when you come from." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Daniel looked at the device, then at me, conflict evident in his expression. "I've broken so many protocols already," he finally said. "I should never have come back after the first visit. Your trading post was simply meant to be one data point in my research." "Research into what?" I pressed. He took a deep breath. "Into daily life during Western expansion. I'm a historical anthropologist, Sarah. I study how people lived in the past. In my time, in 2023, your era is nearly 2 centuries ago." Though I had suspected it, hearing him speak the words aloud made my knees weak. I sank into my chair. "You're claiming to be from the future, a time traveler?" "Yes," he said simply. I laughed then, a sharp sound born of disbelief rather than humor. "You must think me exceedingly gullible." "I don't," he replied. "I think you're remarkably perceptive. You notice details that should have been impossible to detect. You pieced together the truth from fragments of evidence. That's why I've been drawn back to your trading post. Your intelligence and adaptability are extraordinary for any era." His flattery did little to convince me. "Prove it," I demanded. "If you truly come from the future, provide evidence beyond strange coins and candies." Daniel nodded solemnly and reached for the device. His phone. I allowed him to take it this time. He pressed something on its edge, and immediately the glass face illuminated with a brilliant light, displaying tiny, perfect symbols. "This is a smartphone," he explained. "It's a communication and information device. Almost everyone in my time carries one." He demonstrated its functions, showing how it responded to his touch. Then he pressed another symbol, and suddenly the glass displayed a perfect image of the trading post. My trading post, captured in vivid detail and color no painting could achieve. "I took this photograph during my first visit," he said. "A photograph is like an instant painting, capturing exactly what the eye sees." My hands shook as I accepted the device from him. The image was unnervingly perfect, showing the trading post exactly as it appeared from the Eastern approach. "This could be some form of artistic trickery," I suggested, though my conviction was wavering. "Watch," he said, taking the phone back. He touched the screen again, and suddenly the image began to move. I saw myself emerging from the trading post door, looking out at the mountains, then turning back inside. It was a moving picture of me, from his previous visit. I gasped and nearly dropped the device when he handed it back to me. "How is this possible?" "Technology evolves over centuries, Sarah. What seems miraculous to you is commonplace in 2023. He proceeded to show me more photographs of his time. Enormous buildings that pierced the clouds, carriages that moved without horses, flying machines that carried people through the sky. With each image, my disbelief crumbled further. "These could be fantastical illustrations," I said, making one final attempt to cling to the world I understood. Daniel considered me for a moment, then said, "I can show you something that cannot be fabricated." He adjusted something on the phone, then held it toward the window. "Look at this screen." The device displayed the view outside my window, the trees, the distant mountains, but with strange symbols overlaid upon the image. "This is called augmented reality. The phone is adding information to what it sees. Watch what happens when I pointed at the night sky. Though it was still daylight, the screen shifted to show the stars as they would appear after dark, with lines connecting them into constellations and names labeling each one. No illustration could react to movement like this, he said, slowly panning the device across the view. The image shifted accordingly, revealing new stars as the phone moved. I sat in stunned silence, my world unraveling and rewinding before me. "You truly are from the future," I whispered. Daniel nodded. "I am." July 22, 1847. I slept little last night, my mind racing with all that Daniel revealed. After my acceptance of his extraordinary claim, he explained the basics of time travel as they understand it in 2023. The mechanics remain beyond my comprehension despite his attempts to simplify the concepts. He spoke of quantum tunneling and temporal displacement fields, and other terms that sound like sorcery rather than science. What I gathered is this: in his time they have developed the ability to send researchers back to observe historical periods firsthand. The technology is new and restricted to academic and scientific purposes. Daniel is part of a research team studying daily life along the Oregon Trail and at frontier trading posts, witnesses to history that left few written records. He explained that he can only visit once per month due to what he called timeline stabilization. Apparently, the presence of a person from another time creates some form of disturbance in the natural order, which requires time to settle. More frequent visits risk what he termed temporal anomalies, disruptions in the proper flow of history. Most significantly, Daniel revealed that he has broken the primary rule of his research mission: non-interference. Researchers are meant only to observe, never to interact substantially with people from the past. Yet, from our first meeting, he violated this principle by engaging with me directly. I told myself it was acceptable because detailed records of trading post operations would benefit historical understanding, he confessed. But the truth is, I was drawn to you, to your resilience, your intelligence, your adaptability in such harsh conditions. I blushed at this admission but pressed him further about the future. He was reluctant to share specific details, citing protection of the timeline, but did reveal broad strokes of what awaits humanity. According to Daniel, the coming centuries bring both wonders and horrors. Diseases that devastate my time are conquered. Machines perform labor once requiring hundreds of human hands. People regularly live into their 80s and 90s. Information can be transmitted instantly across the globe. Yet he also mentioned wars of unimaginable destruction, new diseases that emerge, and damage to the natural world from human progress. The future, like the present, contains both light and shadow. July 25, 1847. 3 days have passed since Daniel's revelation, and I find myself looking at the world differently. Every object, every practice now appears as it might to him. Primitive, quaint, historically significant. I catch myself wondering how our simple tools and methods will be viewed by those centuries hence. Will they marvel at our hardships or pity our ignorance? Daniel promised to return next month with books. Historical accounts that would not disrupt the timeline but might satisfy my curiosity about the general course of coming events. He cautioned me repeatedly about the dangers of knowing too much about one's future. History must unfold naturally, he said. My presence here is already a risk. Sharing knowledge of future events could create paradoxes with unpredictable consequences. I understand his caution, yet hunger for more knowledge of the world to come. August 1, 1847. A week has passed since I learned the truth about Daniel. The trading post operates as usual, yet nothing feels the same. I find myself examining everyday objects more carefully, wondering how they might evolve through the centuries. Or profound questions plague my sleep. If time is not the linear progression we believed, what does this mean for God's plan, for free will, for the meaning of our choices? Daniel spoke of history as something fixed yet potentially alterable, a paradox my mind struggles to reconcile. I also wonder about my place in this extraordinary circumstance. Why did fate or providence arranged for a time traveler to visit my remote trading post? Why did he choose to reveal himself to me when discovery clearly violates his mission's protocols? August 10, 1847. The days pass slowly now as I await Daniel's return. I've begun reading James's books on natural philosophy with renewed interest, searching for early scientific theories that might help me better understand the concepts Daniel described. My feelings remain conflicted. Excitement at being privy to such wonders mingles with fear of knowledge no mortal was meant to possess. There is also a strange loneliness in being perhaps the only person in this time who knows what is to come. I cannot share this burden with anyone else without risking their thinking me mad, or worse, believing me and potentially changing the course of events Daniel says must remain undisturbed. Sometimes I wonder if I should have remained in blessed ignorance. Then I recall the marvels Daniel showed me, the future of human achievement, and know I could never choose to unsee what has been revealed. I count the days until August 21st with growing anticipation. Whether this knowledge proves blessing or curse, I am irrevocably changed by it. The world appears the same through my window, but my eyes now see it differently. I see it as but one moment in a vast continuum of time, stretching forward into a future I can scarcely imagine, and backward through a past others might someday visit, just as Daniel visits us. Romance Across Time, August 23, 1847. Daniel returned today as promised, carrying a leather satchel that seemed heavier than usual. After ensuring we were alone, he withdrew several books carefully wrapped in protective cloth. Historical accounts, he explained, published in your future, but far enough in my past that sharing them won't disrupt anything significant. The volumes included a comprehensive history of the American frontier, accounts of the Civil War, a terrible conflict he says will begin in 14 years, and a book detailing the development of the Western territories. All were printed with the same incredible precision I noted in his other possessions, with photographs so lifelike they seemed to capture the very souls of their subjects. These are considered primary educational texts, he explained. They contain no specific personal futures or technological details that could alter the timeline. We spent the afternoon sitting side by side at my small table, Daniel explaining contexts for events described in the books. His knowledge is so vast, yet he parcels it carefully, always hesitating before answering my more probing questions. When I inquired about my own future, he smiled sadly. That's precisely what I cannot share, Sarah. Specific personal futures are the most dangerous knowledge. People instinctively try to change negative outcomes or ensure positive ones, creating paradoxes. I understand his caution, yet it frustrates me nonetheless. To be in the company of someone who knows history, yet unwritten, is a peculiar torment, like standing outside a window, viewing a feast one cannot taste. August 22, 1847. Daniel departed yesterday evening, promising to return next month. The books remain hidden beneath a loose floorboard under my bed. I've spent today reading the Frontier History volume, marveling at how future generations will interpret our present struggles. The historian's tone occasionally borders on condescension when describing primitive conditions, which I found mildly offensive. Do they not realize the ingenuity required for survival with limited resources? I was particularly struck by a chapter on women's roles in frontier expansion. Apparently, future scholars will consider women like myself, who maintain trading posts, farms, and businesses while men prospect or hunt, as early pioneers of female independence. How strange to think my daily necessities might someday be viewed as revolutionary acts. September 10, 1847. The days grow shorter as autumn approaches. The trading post sees fewer travelers now as many hurry to cross the mountains before snow makes passages treacherous. In quiet evenings I read Daniel's books by candlelight, carefully reconciling my own observations with what future historians record. There are discrepancies that amuse me. small details of daily life they've misunderstood or overlooked entirely. I find myself compiling notes, almost as if preparing to correct these future scholars. What foolishness. Yet I cannot help but feel protective of my era, wanting it remembered accurately. Perhaps this is why Daniel studies the past directly, rather than relying solely on written accounts. I think of him often, too often for propriety. September 21st, 1847. Daniel's visit today was different from previous ones. Rather than bringing new information, he asked me to teach him frontier skills. How to start a fire without matches, how to read weather patterns, how to identify edible plants. Book knowledge is no substitute for lived experience, he explained. I took him behind the trading post where I maintain a small garden and demonstrated how to identify medicinal herbs. His genuine fascination with these primitive skills was endearing. When he successfully started a fire using flint and charcloth, his expression of triumph made me laugh, a sound I realize has been too rare since James's passing. As dusk approached, we sat by the fire I keep burning in the main room, and I found myself speaking of James more freely than I have with anyone. Daniel listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions about our journey west and the dreams that brought us to this remote place. He would have been astounded by the future you describe, I told Daniel. James always believed human ingenuity would eventually overcome any obstacle. He sounds like a visionary, Daniel replied. Many of humanity's greatest achievements stemmed from that exact belief. Something in his tone when he spoke of James, a gentle reverence without pity, loosened the knot of grief I'd carried. For the first time, remembering James brought more warmth than pain. October 15, 1847. The first snow dusted the mountains this morning, a reminder of winter's approach. I find myself counting days until Daniel's next visit with an eagerness that both troubles and excites me. The books he's provided no longer satisfy my curiosity. I want to ask him about the future of art, of music, of human relationships. Do people still fall in love in 2023? Do they still marry? Do women have more choices in their lives? These questions feel dangerously personal, revealing interests beyond mere historical curiosity. I should not nurture this growing attachment to a man who exists outside my time. Yet in the quiet evenings, when I review my day's accounts and prepare for sleep, my thoughts invariably turn to him. His expressions when discovering something new about the past, the careful way he phrases his answers to avoid revealing too much, how his eyes reflect firelight. I have not felt this fluttering anticipation since James first courted me. The realization both thrills and terrifies me. October 21st, 1847. Providence sent a fierce autumn storm today, one that kept all travelers away, except Daniel. He arrived drenched and windblown, his modern attire poorly suited to the weather despite his attempts to dress appropriately for the era. I insisted he change into dry clothes, some items left behind by James that I've kept. Seeing him dressed in my late husband's simple shirt and trousers created a strange juxtaposition, as though past and future were physically merging before my eyes. The storm intensified throughout the day, making his departure impossible. We sat before the fire as wind howled outside, sharing stories of our vastly different lives. Daniel described growing up in a world of wonders, buildings taller than the highest trees, vehicles that travel without horses, devices that allow people to see and speak with others thousands of miles away. His descriptions painted images so fantastic I could scarcely comprehend them, yet his sincere delivery made them seem almost tangible. In turn, I shared stories of my childhood in Pennsylvania, my education in the small schoolhouse, and the gradual westward migration of my family. The simplicity of my tale seemed inadequate compared to his, yet he listened with genuine fascination. Your life required more courage and adaptability than mine ever has, he said. In my time, most difficulties have technological solutions. You face nature's challenges directly, with only your wits and hands as tools. As night fell and the storm reached its peak, something shifted between us. Perhaps it was the isolation the storm provided, or the growing comfort of months of acquaintance, but our conversation turned to more personal matters. Daniel confessed that his research mission had become secondary to his visits with me. "I should have stopped coming months ago," he admitted. "Each visit increases the risk of timeline disruption, but I found myself inventing research justifications, anything to return to this trading post, to you." His honesty unlocked my own. "I find myself counting days between your visits," I confessed. "The books you bring are valuable, but it's your perspective I've grown to treasure." In that moment of mutual vulnerability, with rain lashing the windows and thunder shaking the walls, Daniel moved closer. His hand covered mine, warm and certain. When our eyes met, I saw my own longing reflected. The kiss that followed seemed inevitable, a culmination of tension that had been building since his strange device first illuminated in my hands. The simple contact carried complexities beyond imagining. I was kissing a man from a future I will never see, who knows a history I am still living. The impossibility of it all should have dampened the moment, yet it only heightened its poignancy. He departed at dawn when the storm cleared, promising to return in a month with greater clarity about what this connection between us could mean. October 22nd, 1847. What have I done? Rational thought has returned with morning light and Daniel's absence. I have developed feelings for a man who does not belong in my time, who must eventually return to a future I cannot comprehend. This attachment can lead nowhere but heartbreak. Yet I cannot regret our kiss. In that moment, the centuries between us collapsed and we were simply two people drawing comfort from connection. Is that not the most human constant throughout time? The need for understanding, for touch, for love? Love. The word appeared in my thoughts unbidden, too soon to name this feeling thus. Yet what else explains the anticipation that now fills me when thinking of his return? November 15th, 1847. Winter approaches in earnest now. The trading post sees few visitors as snow makes travel treacherous. This isolation allows me ample time with the history books, which I've nearly memorized. I find myself wondering about Daniel's life in 2023, his daily routines, his home, his relationships there. Does he have family awaiting his return? The possibility brings a twist of jealousy I have no right to feel. 6 more days until his next visit. The waiting grows more difficult each time. November 21st, 1847. Daniel arrived this morning through nearly knee-deep snow, his determination to reach the trading post evident in his exhausted appearance. After warming himself by the fire, he immediately addressed what transpired between us last month. "I've broken the most fundamental rule of temporal research," he said gravely. "Non-interference is the first principle we're taught. Emotional attachments across timelines are expressly forbidden." My heart sank, believing he had come to end whatever had begun between us. Instead, he continued, "Yet I find myself unable to maintain professional detachment. My feelings for you have grown beyond my ability to control or deny them." Relief flooded through me, followed quickly by the sobering reality of our situation. "What does this mean?" I asked. "You must eventually return permanently to your time. I belong here in mine. There seems no path forward that doesn't end in heartbreak." Daniel's expression turned both serious and hopeful. "There is one possibility, though I hesitated to mention it until I was certain of our mutual feelings." He took my hands in his. "The technology that allows me to travel here could, theoretically, bring you forward to my time." The statement struck me like physical force. "Leave my time completely? Go to the future?" He nodded. "It would be a one-way journey. The process cannot be reversed without creating dangerous temporal instabilities. You could come to 2023, but never return to 1847. I sat in stunned silence, the magnitude of such a choice overwhelming. Leave behind everything familiar? My trading post, my few friends, the grave where James rests, the entirety of the world I know, to live in a future I can barely imagine. "You need not answer now," Daniel assured me. "In fact, you shouldn't. This requires careful consideration of all you would sacrifice. The remainder of his visit passed in subdued conversation, both of us aware of the enormous question now suspended between us. When he left this evening, his farewell kiss carried the weight of our impossible situation. November 30th, 1847. I have spent days considering Daniel's proposition to abandon my time completely for a future I know only through his descriptions and fragments in books. Could any reasonable person make such a choice? Yet what ties me here, truly? The trading post provides my livelihood, but not my purpose. I have acquaintances, but few I would call true friends. James is gone, and while I honor his memory, I have accepted that my future lies beyond his shadow. What awaits in 2023? Daniel describes a world where women enjoy freedoms I can scarcely imagine. Education, profession, independence without social penalty. A world of medical marvels that eliminate diseases that regularly claim lives here. A world where knowledge is instantly accessible through devices like the one Daniel carries. But also a world where I would be hopelessly ignorant of basic functions, where my skills would be obsolete, where I would forever be an outsider to customs and technologies developed over centuries I skipped entirely. Am I contemplating this madness seriously? To leap into the future like a character from one of James's fantastical novels? Logic argues against it, yet my heart races at the possibility of not just witnessing history, but transcending it entirely. 31 more days until Daniel returns. 21 days to make a decision that defies all rational consideration. May Providence guide me toward wisdom, for I find myself drawn toward the most impossible choice imaginable. A choice. December 5, 1847. Since Daniel's proposal, sleep has become a rare visitor. I find myself poring over the history books he provided, searching for any mention of this trading post or the surrounding area's development. What becomes of this place if I were to leave? Do my actions here matter to the broader course of history? The books mention Green River Valley's importance to the fur trade and later settlements, but contain no specific reference to this particular outpost. One passage notes that many small trading operations were abandoned during the gold rush of '49, when proprietors left for California seeking greater fortunes. Another suggests that those that remained often became way stations for the Pony Express or stagecoach lines. Would my departure change anything significant? Would someone else simply take over the post's operation if I were gone? These questions plague me as I try to ascertain whether I have some historical responsibility to remain. Daniel cautioned that seeking specific knowledge of my own future could be dangerous, but surely determining the trading post's fate falls within acceptable historical research. I cannot make this impossible choice without understanding what I would be abandoning. December 10, 1847. I've begun making a methodical list of considerations. Reasons to stay in 1847 and reasons to leave for 2023. The exercise feels absurd. No rational person should need to weigh such options. Yet here I am, quill in hand, determining whether to abandon everything familiar for a world that exists only in Daniel's descriptions and my imagination. Reasons to stay. This trading post represents everything James and I worked for. I understand this world and my place in it. My skills are valuable and necessary here. I would be leaving behind James's grave and memory. The few friends I have all exist in this time. The future contains technologies and customs I may never fully comprehend. I would be abandoning my era before witnessing how history unfolds. Reasons to go. Daniel, this single entry feels weightier than all others combined. Women apparently enjoy freedoms in 2023 I can scarcely imagine. Medical advancements mean better health and longer life. Knowledge and education are more accessible than ever before. I would witness humanity's achievements across 2 centuries. Little appears to bind me here beyond habit and obligation. The adventure of experiencing a new world built upon the foundations of my own. When written plainly, the ledger seems to favor departure. Yet rational accounting cannot measure the profound disorientation of leaving one's entire world behind. Would I forever be a curious relic in 2023, never truly belonging? December 15, 1847. Eli Blackfeather visited today, bringing winter pelts and his usual philosophical conversation. Without revealing my actual situation, I posed a hypothetical question about leaving one's homeland for distant shores never to return. The Shoshone believe all journeys change a person, he replied. The greater the journey, the greater the transformation. One who crosses oceans becomes someone new. But is that transformation worth the loss of all that's familiar? I asked. Eli studied me with knowing eyes. The seed that remains comfortable in familiar soil never becomes the tree it could be. Fear of loss can root us where we no longer belong. His wisdom struck me profoundly. Have I remained at this trading post out of purpose or merely fear of change? Since James's death, I've maintained our business more from obligation to his memory than personal fulfillment. Perhaps my hesitation to accept Daniel's offer stems not from rational consideration, but from fear of transformation. Later, Eli added something that has lingered in my thoughts. My grandfather spoke of spirit walkers who traveled between worlds. He said some souls are born in the wrong time and must journey to find where they truly belong. I wonder if he somehow senses the nature of my dilemma, or if his words are merely coincidental. Either way, they resonate with uncomfortable truth. December 20th, 1847. One day remains until Daniel's visit. I've begun discreetly preparing for potential departure, though I remain undecided. This morning I rode to the small settlement 30 miles south to speak with Mr. Peterson at the land office. Without explaining my reasons, I inquired about the process for selling the trading post should circumstances require it. Property like yours would find quick purchase, he assured me. The Oregon Trail traffic increases yearly, and established outposts are valuable. I signed provisional papers granting him authority to handle the sale in my absence, claiming I might need to attend to family matters back east. The documents await only my final signature and instructions. Upon returning, I began cataloging which possessions truly mattered to me. Surprisingly few items hold genuine significance. James's pocket watch and letters, my mother's Bible, my journal collection, a small portrait my father painted of our family home in Pennsylvania. The rest, furniture, tools, supplies, seem merely functional rather than meaningful. This evening, I found myself standing before James's grave behind the trading post. I've maintained fresh flowers there even through winter, bringing hardy evergreen boughs when blossoms aren't available. What would you advise, my love? I whispered to the silent stone. No answer came, of course, yet I felt a curious peace settle over me. James was always one to embrace adventure and possibility. The future belongs to the bold, he often said when we decided to venture west. Perhaps the truest honor to his memory isn't maintaining the trading post, but embracing the boldest journey imaginable into a future he would have found miraculous. December 21st, 1847, morning. Today Daniel arrives for what may be our last meeting in this era. Whether I stay or go, his research assignment concludes this month. My few essential possessions are packed in a small travel bag, hidden behind the counter. The provisional sale papers await in my desk. Everything is prepared for either decision. Yet my heart remains divided. Last night I dreamt of two paths diverging through a forest. One familiar but lonely, the other obscured by fog yet somehow calling to me. I awoke with tears on my face, no closer to certainty. Daniel explained the logistics during his last visit. The device that enables his travel can transport two people forward but never backward. The process requires precise calculations and considerable energy. He's made arrangements for my arrival in 2023 should I choose to accompany him. Identification documents, living arrangements, resources to help me adjust. Such consideration touches me deeply, yet also underscores the enormity of what adaptation would require. I would be an immigrant not just to a new land but to a new time, with all the disorientation and learning that entails. The sun rises higher now. I must conclude this entry and prepare for Daniel's arrival. By nightfall, I will have made a choice that defies all conventional understanding of a human life's parameters. May Providence guide my decision. December 21st, 1847, evening. Daniel arrived precisely at noon, as predictable as the sun's passage. He carried a small case I hadn't seen before, which he explained contained the temporal displacement device that enables his journeys. "It's configured for 2 passengers on this return journey," he said quietly, "but will function equally well for 1, if that's your decision." We sat before the fire, speaking of what life in 2023 would entail for me. He was honest about the challenges, the overwhelming sensory experiences of a modern city, the technologies that would seem magical, the social customs and language differences that would mark me as an outsider. Even with all our preparation, the adjustment would be significant, he acknowledged. There would be moments of profound disorientation and loneliness. Would I ever truly belong there? I asked. Daniel considered this thoughtfully. Not immediately, and perhaps never completely, but humans are remarkably adaptable. Many immigrants to new cultures eventually find their place, even if they retain aspects of their origins. You would be an extreme example, but not an entirely unique one. He explained that he'd secured a position for himself teaching at a university in a relatively quiet city, away from the most overwhelming centers of population and technology. There he could help ease my transition while continuing his historical research. Your perspective would be invaluable, he noted. Your first-hand knowledge of this era would contribute significantly to historical understanding. As twilight approached, Daniel opened the case, revealing a device unlike anything I've seen, a complex arrangement of metal components surrounding a central crystalline element that seemed to pulse with internal light. "This is what enables temporal displacement," he explained. "It creates a field that can move matter forward through time's natural flow. The window for today's departure opens in approximately 1 hour, at sunset." My heart raced at the sudden immediacy of the choice before me. "Must I decide this moment?" I asked. "The calculations for this departure have been precisely calibrated," he responded gently. "If not today, my research team would require significant notifications and adjustments for another attempt. It could be weeks or months before another opportunity arose." In that moment, staring at the otherworldly device, the full weight of my decision pressed upon me. To stay meant watching Daniel depart, perhaps forever, returning to a future I would never experience. To go meant abandoning everything familiar, every connection to my past life, for an uncertain existence in an unimaginable world. Daniel must have sensed my turmoil, for he took my hands in his and spoke with rare emotion. "Sarah, I cannot pretend this is a simple choice. I've struggled with the ethics of even offering this possibility. Your life here has meaning and value that shouldn't be casually discarded. Yet you still wish me to come with you?" I asked. "Selfishly, yes," he admitted. "These months of knowing you have transformed me. The connection between us transcends professional interest or even ordinary affection. I believe we could build something meaningful together." He paused, then added, "But I would understand if you choose to remain in your time. Your place in history is here, unless you decide otherwise." I stood and walked to the window, watching the sun sink toward the mountains. The trading post that had been my home these past 3 years suddenly seemed both precious and somehow less substantial than before. A waypoint rather than a destination. In that moment of quiet contemplation, surprising clarity emerged. The answer had perhaps been forming within me all along. Beneath my conscious deliberations, I turned back to Daniel, my decision made. December 21st, 1847, night. The device now hums with increasing intensity. Daniel says we have minutes remaining before the temporal window opens. I write these final words of 1847 by lamplight, my last act in the era of my birth. I have chosen to go forward, to leave behind this trading post and the grave of my beloved James, to venture into an uncertain future with a man who crossed time itself to find me. My reasoning defies conventional logic, yet feels unassailably right. I came west seeking a new world and new possibilities. Why should my journey end here, when the ultimate frontier, the future itself, beckons? James would understand. He never feared the unknown or unexplored. Life expands to fill the boundaries we set for it, he often said. What boundaries could be more expansive than those I now prepare to cross? I've signed the papers authorizing Mr. Peterson to sell the trading post. The proceeds will establish a school fund for settler children, a legacy that might outlast my physical presence here. I've left letters for the few who might wonder at my sudden disappearance, speaking vaguely of an unexpected opportunity back east. The small bag at my feet contains all I'm taking to the future: James's watch and letters, my mother's Bible, this journal and its companions, the family portrait, and a pressed flower from James's grave. Everything else remains behind, artifacts of a life completed. Daniel explains that the journey itself will seem instantaneous to me, a flash of light, a moment of disorientation, and then arrival in 2023. The world I've known my entire life will have aged 176 years in an eye blink. The thought is simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. The device's hum has changed pitch. Daniel signals that it's time. I close this journal now, on December 21st, 1847. When next I write, it will be in another century entirely. December 21st, 2023. I struggle to hold the pen steadily enough to write. My hands tremble not from fear but from overwhelming sensation. Everything is too bright, too loud, too fast. The journey itself was exactly as Daniel described. A blinding flash, a sensation of falling without movement, then sudden presence in a different world. We arrived in what Daniel calls his apartment, a dwelling more luxurious than the finest hotel I've ever imagined, yet apparently modest by current standards. Light emanates from glass bulbs without flame. Water flows, hot or cold, at the turn of a metal lever. The air maintains perfect temperature, despite snow falling outside windows that are clearer than any glass I've known. Through those windows, I see a city of impossible structures. Buildings taller than the highest church steeples, stretching toward heaven itself. Lights of every color illuminate the darkness, brighter than the starriest night. Carriages without horses move along paved streets, faster than galloping stallions. The din of this new world is perhaps the most disorienting aspect. Constant humming, beeping, and whirring from devices whose purposes I cannot fathom. Daniel calls it ambient technology and promises my senses will adjust with time. He has been tenderness itself during these first overwhelming hours, explaining patiently, creating a quiet space for my adjustment, responding to my torrent of questions with unfailing patience. When emotion overcame me, grief for all I've left behind, mingling with awe at what lies before me, he simply held me until the storm passed. I am a time traveler. The thought remains incomprehensible even as I write the words. Everyone I knew in my former life has been dust for over a century. The trading post likely stands no more. The world I knew has transformed beyond recognition. Yet amid this disorientation, one certainty provides anchor: the connection between Daniel and myself. It has survived the ultimate test, the passage of nearly 2 centuries. When he looks at me, I see not just love but profound understanding of the sacrifice I've made, and the courage this journey requires. "Welcome home, Sarah," he whispered when we arrived. The words seemed presumptuous at first. How could this alien landscape be home? Yet, as the initial shock subsides, I begin to understand. Home isn't necessarily where one begins, but where one chooses to be. I have chosen the most extraordinary path imaginable, to leap from one century to another, from candlelight to electric brilliance, from isolation to global connection. The journey of adaptation that lies before me will require every ounce of courage and resilience I possess. Yet, as I write these words, in a room illuminated by technology James would have considered miraculous, I feel not just disorientation, but possibility. I have been granted what no other human in my era could imagine: a second life in a future world. Tomorrow, Daniel will begin teaching me to navigate this new reality. For tonight, I simply observe, record, and marvel at the extraordinary turn my existence has taken. I close this entry as a woman out of time, but precisely where I have chosen to be, balanced between grief for the world I've left behind and wonder at the one that now surrounds me.